Welcome to the Press Box. I'm Ryan Thorburn, joined as always by Steve Mims. We're getting set for the 119th edition of the Civil War, Oregon hosting Oregon State on Friday. Steve, Oregon is arguably the hottest team west of the Mississippi. They've won 5 in a row. Unfortunately for them, Stanford is the North champion, but it's not for a lack of trying. They're on fire on the other end of the spectrum. You have the Beavers, who are 0-8 in conference play. Doesn't seem like much of a matchup. Is there any way that Oregon State makes this interesting?
You know, you can't imagine. So you really have a hard time going back and finding a time maybe when these two programs were on, any further apart heading into a civil war, particularly just because when Oregon's been good in these recent ones and had a lot on the line, Oregon State had something to play for. There's been some talk of 2 years ago when Oregon State got blown out by Washington and then came and led Oregon into the fourth quarter, but Sean Mannion and Brandon Cooks aren't walking through that door on Saturday, and it's hard to imagine Oregon State putting together any kind of a fight to be able to hang with Oregon's offense.
Yeah, as Oregon found out, when your quarterback situation is up in the air, bad things happen, and Oregon State's is certainly, it's definitely the number one issue they need to figure out for the future. Seth Collins, their starter for the first 6 games, is now thinking about playing wide receiver in this game. So that just tells you what's happened there. I think they have a transfer from Utah State coming in next year. Oregon's defense, on the other end, the secondary especially, has really played well lately. They only gave up 3 touchdowns to USC and a punt return. How do you see that matchup working out with Oregon State's offense and Oregon's defense?
Yeah, I think when you're Oregon's offense and you're coming off of Cody Kessler and Kevin Hogan and Jared Goff and Mike Bercovici, you're pretty excited to see McMarion, Nick Mitchell, Seth Collins, whoever is going to be back there. It's, again, especially with the wide receivers, I think Villman could present some problems for Oregon, but they just don't have kind of that guy on the other side that can, take some pressure off. And it's hard to, like I say, it's just hard to come up with too many possibilities where Oregon State really moves the ball a whole lot, other than maybe some balls deep to Villman.
Then the other side, obviously, Oregon is just on fire with Vernon Adams Jr., 6 touchdowns last week, 5-0 since he got healthy. And then people kind of somewhat forget about Royce Freeman, at least nationally, and Oregon leading the Pac-12 in rushing for the 10th consecutive year. And then, unfortunately for the Beavers, they're having a tough time stopping the run, 116th nationally. So that's where it's really lopsided.
Yeah, there's not too many mismatches you're going to find. There's too many matchups in this one you're going to find that come out real even. But certainly, Royce Freeman, just the way this Oregon offense is going right now, I mean, Oregon State gave up 52 last week to Washington, and that's not a team that has anything near the firepower Oregon does. I was looking today, 65 points, I think it was 2008, the most points ever scored in the Civil War. I think if you're setting it over and under, you might set it at that for Oregon and see if they can get there.
Yeah, I think the Vegas odds makers think that Mark Helfrich is some sort of sympathetic guy because they only have the spread at 34 points. I think, unfortunately for the Beavers, I think the Ducks could score, just about as many points as they want to in this game. There's not a lot of buzz about it. I think that's a real problem. Do you see Gary Anderson turning things around at Oregon State?
Not quickly. I mean, I really don't. I think if you look at that program, they do bring back a lot next year on offense, basically other than Woods, but like you mentioned, I mean, who's the quarterback of the future there? Is it Seth Collins, as we thought earlier in the year? Is he a wide receiver? Is it Darrell Garrettson? Is McMarion and Mitchell? I mean, just doesn't seem like they've settled on any sort of a quarterback, and they're almost in the situation that Oregon was in a couple weeks ago where you just kind of didn't know who the guy was. It shows you how important it is to have that guy as they did in Mannion, and so I think it's a few years coming before this team is really to the point where they're back, where a Civil War can become a game for the North title like it was a few years ago.
As for the Ducks, I think Scott Frost summed it up pretty well. There's mixed emotions. They're very proud of how they've rebounded from 3-3, and then they're also gnawed at the fact of what would have happened if Vernon Adams Jr. were never injured. They have a chance to finish 9-3, which is better than the previous 4 Heisman Trophy teams to lose Heisman Trophy winners. Do you see any chance of them getting to a major bowl like the Fiesta, or too many dominoes have to fall?
I think if Stanford could beat Notre Dame and then win the Pac-12 title and some other things happen and get in the Final Four, I think Oregon's got a good shot at the Rose Bowl. The Fiesta, I think the problem is just that you got too many programs that have been down recently, like Michigan, Florida, teams that have really good fan bases that travel that haven't had a big game to travel for a while. I think those are going to become really attractive to places like the Fiesta Bowl and even a Michigan State is going to be in there, and Ohio State. Those are teams that traditionally travel. So I think there's going to be a lot of teams for very few, basically 5 at large spots, and I think it's going to be hard for a 3-loss team to get in that.
All right, well, we'll see how the season ends. Thanks for tuning in. We'll talk to you later.